A billionaire once stood at the center of China's property boom. He built a company worth more than $50 billion and was once Asia's richest man. Today, he's serving a life sentence in prison. His name is Hui Ka Yan, and his downfall tells a much bigger story. It tells the story of how China's property boom became a mountain of debt, and how the collapse of one developer came to weigh on the world's second largest economy. Hui's story started far away from the skyscrapers in China. He was born in rural Henan in 1958. In his younger days, Hui was employed at a state-owned steel factory. Then came China's economic opening. In 1992, Hui moved to Shenzhen in southern China. 4 years later, he set up Evergrande. The timing was extraordinary. China was urbanizing rapidly. Millions of people were moving into cities. Demands for home were soaring. Evergrande moved aggressively to meet that demand. But there was a catch. Much of that expansion was financed with borrowed money. Evergrande bought land, launched projects, sold homes before they were completed, and then it used more borrowing to keep expanding. The model worked while property prices kept rising and credit kept flowing. By 2017, Hui's personal wealth was estimated at $45.3 billion. Evergrande's market value had climbed above $50 billion. By 2020, the company was generating around $100 billion in annual sales. But behind that success was an enormous debt burden. Evergrande's total liabilities reached over $300 billion by the end of 2021. Then, Beijing moved to curb excessive borrowing across the property sector. In 2020, regulators introduced what became known as the Three Red Lines. The rules put limits on developers' debt and cash positions. Evergrande could no longer borrow and expand as freely as before. The model began to break. Cash became harder to find, and the company struggled to pay what it owed. December 2021, Evergrande defaulted. But this was no longer just a problem for one company. Evergrande had sold homes to millions of buyers. It owed money to banks and other creditors. So its collapse also damaged confidence across China's property market. Other major developers began facing financial trouble. The damage spread through a sector that had become central to China's economy. At its peak, property accounted directly and indirectly for about a quarter of China's economic output. Homes were also a huge part of household wealth. The sector was worth an estimated $52 trillion in 2029. So, when property prices started falling, the impact went far beyond developers. Households became more cautious, potential buyers delayed purchases, local governments lost revenue from land sales, banks faced greater risks from property-linked loans. China's property market has now been declining for about 5 years. Used home prices in major cities have fallen by more than a third from its peak. Beijing has tried to contain the damage. Authorities have cut mortgage costs. They have relaxed home buying restrictions and have provided financing. This is to help complete stalled housing projects. But the weakness has persisted. Real estate investment fell by nearly 1/5 year-on-year in the first 7 months of this year. That is the backdrop to Hui's sentence. In April, he pleaded guilty to charges including fundraising fraud, bribery, and misuse of funds. The Shenzhen court has now sentenced him to life in prison. His personal property has been confiscated. Evergrande and an affiliate have been fined 15.82 billion yuan, or about $2.4 billion. Another 56 people linked to Evergrande have also been sentenced. Evergrande did not create China's entire property crisis, but its collapse exposed how deeply debt had become embedded in the system. The irony is difficult to miss. Hui once represented the extraordinary wealth created by China's property boom. Now, his company represents the damage left behind by it.